Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you again about Vedic astrology, how it can impact you over the next week, and also how it can impact the world at large. We're going to do this in three segments. First, I'll talk about the general horoscope and the upcoming presidential election, as we all know that's coming. We'll also talk about the individual um, predictions for your signs or what the week looks like. And we'll also talk about where it'll impact on the world map. I've been doing these broadcasts for a few years now. I am also a 33-year veteran of Vedic astrology, 34 years almost. And so I'll be getting right to it right away. If you would like to contact me for a reading, please call me at 508 525 0001, or you can email me at Gary Gomes G, that's GaryGomes at Gmail, Gary Gomes G, the letter G, at gmail.com. Those are the easiest ways to get in touch with me. I apologize for the glare over here. Uh, yeah, it's around midday and the sun just comes in really heavily on that white door. So I'm trying to think of a remedy to do it, maybe taping later at night, but this is when my energy levels are about the highest, and I figure it's better to put up with the glare just a little bit than have me at low energy level. Let's see what's going on in the world map, first of all. Uh, then we'll check out the candidates charts, and it'll mostly be focused around um, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And let me see now. So let me see if I can get this so you can see the screen rather than the glare from the door, which I'm not too happy about. Yeah. All right. So that screen is showing up. So there's a little bit of, I'm over here, folks, by the way. So this screen we have Venus in the first house. Venus is in Scorpio, right in the middle of the sign, which gives it which makes it rather strong, not super strong, but rather strong. Saturn strength makes it stronger. The Saturn aspect on Venus makes it stronger. And I'm going to go to the election day as well, the final election day. The sun is debilitated, so that's not a good sign for incumbents normally. And I think what we're going to see over this Rahu Mahadasha is a lot of interrupted presidencies, a lot of split presidencies. It doesn't mean it's impossible for a president to have an 8-year term, but given the number of years that are left in the Rahu Mahadasha, right now it's looking a bit unlikely. Uh, Kamala Harris would have the best numerical chance uh, of uh, of attaining that, but that's if she wins. So let's see now. So let's go here. So Saturn is fully aspecting Venus. So essentially, this generally means bad news for entertainment and the entertainment industry. Also, it can be a little bit difficult period, especially politically for women. Jupiter aspects of Venus and Saturn aspects to the moon. So we have actually a relatively similar combination to what we had last week when I did this broadcast. So Saturn's aspecting the moon, Saturn's aspecting. So the moon is in Leo, potentially a good week for money for people. Sun is weak though, so that can mean some inconsistency in the stock market over the next week or so. K2's in Virgo, so we're going to be checking each other's words and also lying about them a great deal because we have a Mars-Mercury aspect in the chart. Remember that's to me is the most infamous, is the most telling political combination, mainly because Mars, I have seen some texts in which Mars is associated with lying. I don't believe that's true. That's true, but Mars is associated with fast action. So if Mars aspects Mercury, you have this combination of strategy, discrimination. So essentially what you'll have is what I would call not mincing, dissection of words. Okay, so that's been happening a great deal. So in Harris's case, it's been dissecting her presentation. In Trump's case, it's been dissecting things that were essentially, I would say, either taken out of context or they can't readily be verified by independent sources. So you can disagree with me on that, that's fine, but basically those are the two dynamics I see working together. We did have a relatively big media event on Friday in which Trump appeared at the on the Joe Rogan broadcast, and the government wasn't happy about it. That's the sun, but the sun is weak, and I would say media is under attack because Mars is going over the United States birth combination of Mercury Rahu. So media is definitely under attack. Traditional media is definitely under attack. Whether or not that sustains itself is open to question, but you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Once something's been uncorked, it takes a while for that to get corked back in again. So I think we're stuck with a system that favors independent reporting. The other, to me, we have significant news stories coming out about Trump allegedly being involved in what can only be described as another sexual assault allegation in which Epstein was present, the late Epstein was present, and Kamala's husband being accused of hitting a former girlfriend, striking a former girlfriend. The other thing, though, that I thought was really interesting was what we would call foreign interference. So Rahu is over here. This is the foreign planet, but if the sun's in the 12th house, that doesn't indicate foreign governments are trying to influence what's going on over here. And it wasn't just the finding that uh, um, certain foreign governments have been tracking uh, phones or trying to hack into phone systems. It was also the Prime Minister of England's contact with um, the Harris campaign, essentially asking to shut down Elon Musk's Twitter. So I find a lot of these machinations really interesting because media itself has become an issue in this kind of campaign. Um, so it's really more, it's becoming not only an issue connected with democracy, so you have that Jupiter and Taurus combination, and also Saturn in Aquarius, but that's a retrograde Saturn. That's not going to go quite the way people expect it to go. And also, we have this very concerted attempt to see who exercises control or influence. And it's not just coming from within the United States, although there have been several politicians, uh, Republicans as well as Democrats, looking for ways to control social media. So the TikTok, um, censor TikTok or control TikTok came from the Republicans, and there are now moves among the liberal parties across the world to essentially find ways to limit the influence of Twitter or Facebook or, you know, and there has been ongoing censorship in China and other countries around the world uh, of social media for years now. And this was something I can remember telling my friend Gary O'Toole a few years ago, before it even started. So I think those trends are going to continue. It'll be a kind of a battle. I think, you know, it's not it's not necessarily, I understand the arguments on both sides. I think, though, my main concern is if people are trying to control the flow of information, it gets awfully close to what we would call uh, controlled thought or controlled speech, because once you can control speech, you can essentially try to control thought. Doesn't always work, but um, it's essentially if you have all these media platforms, and this is true of, Musk has succeeded on several occasions with dictatorships around the world. You have the danger of the interchange of ideas being suppressed. Now, again, this is a political statement. It's a little bit outside the form of astrology, but over the next few years, I think you're going to see a change in belief systems. That's the Rahu over Pisces right now. A lot of things which are appealing to traditional belief systems are carrying a whole lot of water right now. And K2 being in Virgo increases our discriminative ability. In terms of things like inflation and the economy, that Saturn is still detrimental to the economy. It still has people worried about the direction the economy is flowing in. Venus has to do with the value of things, and Saturn aspecting Venus and Venus aspecting Jupiter. A lot of people will be very concerned with their material security. That's what they will vote upon. And if we're looking around the world, this concern about material security is not isolated to the United States. A lot of countries are going through much worse inflation than we have gone through. That's in part due to COVID. That's in part due to governmental measures, essentially amping up the interest in amping up the price of oil and trying to force electorates into more centralized systems and systems which accelerate environmental controls. Okay, so I'm just saying this descriptively. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying whether I agree with it or disagree with it. The problem with this is you endanger the entire economy while you're trying to fix the globe. And while I'm in favor of fixing the globe, I also want to make sure that people have enough money to survive. So it becomes a bit dicey. All right. So as in everything else, it becomes kind of a juggling act, right? So you try to fix one thing, and if you try to fix one thing too quickly, it throws other things way out of balance. So let's just look at Harris's chart just for 1 second. There you go. October 20th, she just had her birthday. Happy birthday, Kamala. So she has a full moon in her chart. We've already looked at this, but Saturn aspects that moon. She's in, it looks like a Venus moon Rahu subperiod. So interestingly enough, her campaign is struggling a lot right now. So uh, the Rahu is poised for potency. The Jupiter subperiod may give her some relief. She's in a Jupiter's in the 12th house though in her chart. It's not necessarily auspicious for victory. Jupiter is in the sign though, so that offsets a little bit. Her moon is in Taurus in the chart, in the Navamsha chart, and in the Dasamsha chart. Moon is also in Taurus. So that Jupiter transit over that moon is good, but it's a little bit dicey, a little risky because you have Rahu in the Dasamsha chart, which has to do with career, placed in the first house. But I've noticed this in the last presidential chart I can think of that had Rahu in the first house was George H.W. Bush. And he was down for several months, but he recovered much more quickly than Harris did. And this Jupiter being in the 12th and being extremely weak, it does to me it doesn't look good for her winning. It'll be closer than a lot of people expect it will be, but just from what I've seen of astrology, Jupiter in her Navamsha chart is debilitated, and also in her Dasamsha chart is debilitated in the eighth house. This is not promising. So that's what I'm basing it on. It's not the fact that Rahu, uh, Trump was also in a Rahu Mahadasha when he won, but his Rahu is in what's called a Raj Yoga with the Lord of the first house. He's a bit stronger. Trump also has a Raj Yoga in his first house. He has Mars in his first house. So um, it's not, again, I'm going to say this guardedly because again, I'm becoming more certain that Trump will win, but I still think there's like a 70% chance of him winning. And you know, I also think that we're going to see attempts to stop him from coming to office, and it'll probably come on the heels of his sentencing. in the 34 felonies case. So that will essentially gum up the works in November. But let's look. Yeah, yeah. So there'll be a period. So Trump right now is in a sun subperiod up until November 4th. He does hit a moon subperiod, and his moon is very weak, but it's empowered by that very strong sun. Okay. His Mars also aspects that moon that cancels the debilitation out a bit. Okay. Not entirely. And if we go to the Dassamsha chart, one, two. So Mars is in the 12th house in the Dassamsha chart. In the Dassamsha chart, his Jupiter is debilitated, right? So this is similar to Kamala Harris's chart. But if we're looking at the Navamsha chart, one, two, three, four, his moon goes into Pisces, which is in the 10th house, can give unexpected gains, but unexpected obstructions. And let's see now. First house Lord is the moon. I'm sorry, 10th house Lord is the moon in the Dassamsha chart. The moon in this chart is in the 7th house, along with K2, which again will give some obstructions. Now, when will these occur? Looks like around November 18th, you will have, I would say, there will be ups and downs between November 4th and I think by the November 8th, he could be declared winner, but it may be as late as November 18th because he enters a favorable subperiod to keep him out of office between November 27th. See now, one second. Sorry, hold on a second. And December 21st. Now, keep something in mind. This November 4th is a bit like a cliff for Trump. Okay, so that's really what puts the doubt in my mind for Trump. But as I said, K2 is basically in its own sign. Moon is at 28 degrees, 5 minutes. It's not at its weakest debilitation point. As a matter of fact, the moon gets a kind of a boost up after it's past its weakest debilitation point. So let's look at, so that's why I think he's going to win. Jupiter is also aspecting the moon when this happens. And Jupiter is clearly and unequivocally in his 10th house. And so let's look at November 5th. So election day, I'm not going to change the location because it really doesn't matter. Yeah, we're looking at November 5th. Mars is in the 12th house. Moon is in Sagittarius and indicates disruption on election day and in the immediate aftermath of election day. There will probably be demonstrations because of Mars. No, this isn't really the eighth house. So let's start it for around. It says 10:54. Let's go to 8:30. Let's go to 8 a.m. because the elections have already started. It's not, you know, they're not really going to. We have that Venus and Mercury over Trump's moon. That would be considered a good placement. Jupiter is in Trump's 12th house unequivocally. Uh, it's close to Kamala's 12th house, but that's not really, it can give victory in elected office, but it's kind of stretching it to me. Um, the other thing is, as I said, I'm just not at all that convinced that Kamala's chart is that strong a chart. Um, Rahu is prominent, but Rahu gives illusion, and it doesn't get. So here we go back to that chart again. It does get some help from Mercury being in the house of politics. Okay, let me just get this one more time. All right, so sorry if this is overly technical, but her Mercury's at 8 degrees. So it's Avastya is Kumar, which is essentially a youth, and Rahu is essentially in, see, no, hold on a second. No, it's a baby. It's basically a baby. So although that Rahu does show up many, many times, and it could be considered the Almakaraka planet or the soul indicator planet, if you're using 8 indicators, it still strikes me as being too weak to do much good. Again, she does get a slight boost up during the Jupiter subperiod, but right now, the Rahu subperiod is really tough. I would have to see like some really strong signs of a recovery around um, October 28th um, to show that Jupiter is working in her favor, to be honest. And that may still happen. Okay, that may still happen. But right now, the way it's trending right now, Trump's sun is one of his strongest planets. He's in a sun subperiod right now. The last day of the election, it changed the signs. It goes to moon. That could give him a reversal, but I still think the sun's momentum will be too strong to take it away from him. So we'll see what happens. Okay. So let's go back to the actual chart for now and go through your individual signs. Yeah, but I think unfortunately, and I just want to take one more second to look at the United States chart just quickly. So people like Jamie Raskin have already been saying that they're going to try to get, if Trump wins, they're going to try to get his um get avoided because of his status as a felon. So I think that's where you're going to see the drama come in. And again, keep in mind, these are always dicey, and especially right now with the flips coming October 28th and November 4th, it's really, it's a qualified prediction. Okay. but I think the sun will carry him through. I really do. I think the sun will carry him through. Um, the United States chart has a Mars period happening. It'll have a moon period happening November 5th on the day of the election. November 5th, there'll be a Saturn and subperiod that interacts well with Harris's chart, but also with Trump's chart. So essentially, there's no indication that it favors either one of them. Um, Basically, and the reason I'm saying that is because Trump's Jupiter is in this sign, and it's a really strong Jupiter. Harris is um, this is Harris's fourth house, but it's K2 transiting, so that's not really positive. The other thing is right here around December 18th to February 9th, we have a potential for violence, maybe even um, anxiety about war, or maybe even uh, conflict breaking out. So, and again, you change. There will be a back and forth until at least December 18th regarding the election. So, um, and I'm even seeing it being contested all the way between February 9th and June 30th of next year. So it's really, I hope I'm wrong about that, by the way, because there's too much going on uh, for us to waste more time on this. But that's what it looks like next year, just quickly. All right, so let's go to the now chart again. And I'll take my chart out of the background. I didn't mean to leave it there. Um, go with the US chart. No peeking in my chart. I really don't care if anybody looks at my chart. But a little bit more relevant there. All right. So for Aries, we have Jupiter in the second house. So this is going to give the interest in prosperity. Although a little bit of the ambition, there'll be more fights at home, more arguments at home. Relationship life will be stressed this coming week. Um, Moon is in the fifth house. That can give good financial luck to this sign. K2, some problems with kids, though, and some problems with illness. Venus is in the eighth, aspected by Saturn, so that tends to give some drains on income, although Jupiter retrograde will bring it in from other sources. And if you look at Saturn over here, Saturn's aspecting the first house, so hard work and heavy expenditures. Rahu is direct again. So this is kind of unusual to see Rahu direct so many times. These are corrections essentially built into the average mean motion of Rahu that most traditional astrologers use. I use the true node because it corrects for changes and courses of action of the nodes to make eclipse predictions more accurate. So I use the true node, which allows Rahu to go direct occasionally. But this has been, I would say, um, a sea change of a week, basically. Um, I I think when Rahu goes direct and big events happen, it's not going to change back magically into what happened before. For Taurus, Taurus has Jupiter in the first house, good for financial gains, but a little bit unstable and good for inheritances. Um, Mercury is in the fifth house. It's been in the fifth house for the past few weeks. I'm sorry, it's in the sixth house. It's been in the sixth house for the past few weeks. K2's in the fifth house, so this can give some problems with children, as we said with Aries. Moon is in the fourth house, some concerns or worry or anxiety about family members. And Mars is in the third house, so it gives some energy, some dynamism to this sign. But it's more emotional, it's more frustration. Um, let's see now. Venus is in the seventh house, good for meeting new relationship partners, good for engaging in new business ventures for the sign. And this is May 15th to June 15th, just to keep us on track. Rahu's in the 11th house, so again, friends are not worthy of trust, but they can help you out a bit. So this isn't a bad week for Taurus. It's just that Mars down there affecting relationship life, which is a little bit rough. So there are likely to be more arguments at home, as is the case with Aries. For Gemini, this is June 15th to July 15th. Mars is in the second house. It's another Mars affliction combination. So people with this particular sign placement should really not be interested in forming new relationships or new business partnerships unless they're people they've known for a long time. Moon is in the second house, should bring some more money into the sign. Mars is in the first house, makes the sign more dynamic, more energetic, but also more likely to fly off the handle. Sun is weak and debilitated, so the moon being in the second house really doesn't help out the sun, but it's okay. K2 is in the fourth house. Unexpected upsets or blockages to this particular sign. Sun is in the fifth house. That's a weak sun, very, very weak sun. So a lot of the ambitions or desires of the sign may be thwarted for about, I say, for about 3 weeks. And Mercury's in the same sign. So that helps the sign in terms of thought and maybe even in terms of attacking other people. The seventh lord is Jupiter. Seventh lord is in the 12th house. So that can mean some distance or some remoteness from relationship partners. And Saturn is in the ninth house, so good luck, but with hard work. Rahu should bring some fame and increased prosperity to the sign. Now, if we go to Cancer, Cancer has Mars in the first house. Now, this is not necessarily bad, okay? Mars is what's called a special union-making planet for Cancer rising. Mars is weak in this particular chart. It's not at its weakest, but it is weak in this particular sign, excuse me. And it can hurt career ambitions or make a person feel like they have no control over their life. Excuse me. The major thing I look at with this is there are going to be fights at home, arguments at home, arguments over who's in control. The moon's in the second house, brings a lot of anxiety because Saturn's aspecting the moon. K2's in the third house, and this is for the period from July 15th to August 15th. K2's in the third house, and that makes it a little bit more forceful to have your dreams come true. But Sun is in the fourth, is in the actual fourth house. And again, you won't feel like you're in control of your life. Trouble with children, excuse me, trouble with children. So this indicates children will be willful, dramatic, a lot of flare-ups, a lot of feeling of lack of control of children. If we're looking at The eighth house over here, Saturn's in the eighth. Again, this is sort of a career-changing time for this particular sign. It will be until March. And this sign will go through a lot of changes between now and March as Saturn goes direct towards the end of the year. There'll be positive changes, but there will be a need to let things go that aren't working. For Rahu in this chart, Rahu's in the ninth house. It will increase financial prosperity, but again, there'll be this strong, and you'll also have some help from friends. But because of family matters, there'll be an expense because of family matters. Now for Leo, Moon is in Leo in the first house. That's generally a good placement. Um, is in Purva Falguni Nakshatra, which is good for financial growth. Mars is in the 12th house, though, so again, this can mean a lot of arguments with relationship partners or partners in general. A lot of need for, and this is true for everybody, but watch out for people just taking your words and twisting them and not acting like everything is to their pleasure because it isn't perfect. Okay, so that's one way to read the Mars Saturn aspect. Good for financial growth for this particular sign. Um, Sun, though Lord of the first house, is weak and with Mercury, so it can confuse communications. It's also weak, so it can affect career life. It's weakened by Saturn's aspect. But Jupiter also goes through the 10th house, and it should lift up the person's career prospects. Saturn's in the 7th house. That can mean some backstabbing or some setbacks from open enemies. Rahu is in the 8th house. Again, I've told the sign to watch out for conspiracies or people maneuvering against them. This is August 15th to September 15th birthdays. And Jupiter in the 10th house, very good for career boost, extremely good for career boost for this sign. For Virgo, our friend Virgo, K2 is in the first house. It'll be there for a while. It'll be there until next June. I'll be in Virgo. This is September 15th to October 15th. So there will be this feeling of being unseen or under recognized or underappreciated. But it's also a good time for self-study. It's also a good time for self-reflection. It's also a good time for figuring out what you want and for giving up things that aren't working and for using your intuition to figure out what will give you the best rewards for your efforts. Sun is in Libra. This is not necessarily a bad placement for this sun or rising sign because it slows down debts. It actually makes debts weaker. Mercury's in the second house, good for making money. Venus is in the third house. This is the best possible planet for Virgo rising. It's a little bit afflicted because of the Saturn aspect, but helped by Jupiter. So there'll be this influx of money, but it'll go away to pay bills, if that makes sense. And maybe bills connected to a relationship partner. Rahu's in the 7th house. So essentially, this Rahu in the 7th house, you'll be attracted to a lot of different people. I wouldn't act on it. I don't buy the axiom that Rahu is necessary for marriage. It's in the 7th house. It can make you see people a little bit less clearly than you should. And especially because K2 is kind of a lonely planet, it'll make relationships good. The good effect of K2 in the first house is it can detach you and it can make you more wary of getting attracted to the wrong relationship partner. Jupiter's in the 9th. That's a good placement. So you'll have business opportunities with Jupiter in the ninth. Mars is in the 11th, so be prepared for fights with friends. Moon is in the 12th. Good for saving money, actually, with this particular combination. Let's move over to Libra. Libra has the Sun and Mercury in the first house. It's a debilitated 11th house Lord, which can make the person more prone to illnesses, but that'll pass within about 2 weeks. And Mercury's in the first house. That makes it more prone to spending money for knowledge, but also granted luck. Venus is in the second house, good for financial growth overall. And Saturn's in the fifth. So if Saturn's in the fifth, the person gains knowledge. They get past life credit from hard work they've done in the past. However, it is kind of a physically demanding period for both Virgos and Libras. Rahu's is in the sixth house, so that tends to make the sign prone to this, not dishonest transactions on his half, prone to people trying to steal from it, especially with K2 in the 12th house. So watch out for new deals. And send away for packages or something like that. Make sure that everything that you ask for is delivered, those kinds of things. Um, Mars is in the 11th house. That's actually a good placement. You have planets in the 11th and the second house. That should be good for some financial gain, although it will be a lot of hard work. For Scorpio, Venus is in the first house. Jupiter aspects it. So again, this is not a bad week for Scorpio. Saturn aspects it, so this sign would be expected to work hard, work extremely hard. Rahu is in the fifth house, so again, some problems with children are indicated. Some new business or romantic opportunities, perhaps from the past, because Jupiter's in the seventh. Mars is in the ninth house. Now, this is interesting because for this particular sign, the ninth house is considered to be a bad house, and the Lord of the first house is in the ninth house. So it will tend to make your luck, especially with bosses, a little bit tougher to manifest. You may even think about a job change with that moon in the 12th house, but I would avoid changing jobs until really the end of the year. K2's in the 11th house. Again, this sign has to be careful about his friendships. For Sagittarius has its Lord Jupiter in the sixth house. So again, there are a lot of legal ramifications, a lot of struggles. Saturn is in the third house. Saturn being in the third house is relatively good for self-discipline control. Rahu being in the fourth, though, the population does want to change. Okay, so that's something the people around you want to change. The general population wants to change. They're not sure in which direction they should go. But that's very true for both individually and in the United States. Mars is in the eighth house. There is a general fear of war. Diplomacy is not working no matter which way you push it, either in your personal life or otherwise. And a lot of people will find a lot to criticize in you. Financially, there will be some gains, but I think it comes with a great deal of struggle. Okay, because Mars is weak in this chart, and that's kind of a critical planet for Sagittarius. K2 is in the 10th house, so lack of career recognition continues really until about June. And Sun and Mercury are in the 11th house. Good for some financial gains and some improvement in luck. Venus is in the 12th house, good for savings. For Capricorn, Saturn's in the second house, good for income and growth. Venus is in the 11th house. That's another combination. Combination that's good for income growth. So this is surrounded by a malefic and a benefic second house and 11th house. So that should be good for any potential for Capricorn. Rahu's in the third house, so you may be a little bit too ambitious or take too many shortcuts. That's amplified by the Mars Mercury aspect on Libra, and Jupiter aspecting Venus also makes it a little bit too easy to take shortcuts. So be careful about any legal complications that could come from that. Mars is in the seventh house, not a happy time for new partnerships or new relationships, so best to avoid them for a couple of months. Moon is in the eighth house, good for inherited or unearned income. Sun and Mercury are in the 10th house, and Venus is in the 11th house, so basically good for career. For Aquarius, Saturn sits in the first house, so this makes this sign the ruler of the chart. Rahu's in the second house. A lot of gains, especially for things you wanted for a long time. So this should be relatively good for you for those with Aquarius suns. So again, we're talking about really February 15th to March 15th. And let's see now. Jupiter's in the fourth house, good for financial gains for Aquarius. Again, with hard work, but it is there. Mars aspects Saturn in the first house. So the sign will have a tendency towards being overly perfectionistic. Moon is in the seventh house, so you'll attract some rich people or maybe even some females who have, or relationship partners who have wealth to you. So this isn't necessarily a bad time for relationships for this sign. K2 is in the eighth, a lot of interest in going behind the scenes and digging out mysteries. Sun and Mercury are in the ninth house, so this good relationship producing moon is kind of compromised because the person doesn't have self-confidence or self-esteem or has self-esteem issues. Um, Venus is in the 10th house, so good for career growth. Finally, for Pisces, Pisces has Jupiter in the third house, Rahu is in the first, so a lot of demand for growth. Mars is in the some more problems with kids, although kids may be a little bit overly emotional or fight oriented. Moon is in the sixth house. You'll have to watch out for flus and viruses. K2 is in the seventh. Relationship partner will seem a little bit strange or offbeat. And Sun and Mercury are in the eighth, so this sign's vital energy will be down a little bit. Venus is in the ninth. Not necessarily a bad placement for this chart. I think you'll see a lot of desires being fulfilled, especially in the work front, and especially through learning. And Jupiter, the Lord of the first house, is in the third, so a lot of fulfillment of desires connected with work. But again, a heavy expenditure pattern. So heavy expenditure patterns show through in a great many of the signs in the chart. Especially true of Aries, I would say through Leo, and again, pretty much from Sagittarius through Pisces. So, you know, so even though there are heavy expenditure patterns indicated for the remaining signs are not quite as strong as for those signs. All right, so let's look at the astro mapping chart so we can go around the world and never leave our homes. Okay. So let's do this and time and space change. right. A lot easier to see, right? Okay. So, basically, let me move this down a little bit to the Indian Ocean where we don't have a lot of land masses to, um, or I can move it over here. Let's move it over here. All right. So basically, first thing we see is the sun. So there'll be challenges to Alaskans' governance. Mercury will be intensely political now in the Hawaiian Islands, especially connected with land. I've been saying that land has been an issue with the Hawaiian Islands for quite a while now, but it looks even more extreme right now. This Moon-Venus conjunction isn't affecting anything. This Jupiter can, but Venus is hitting up towards Northern California and through uh, Oregon and Washington State and into Idaho, so it can give some danger of flooding. Jupiter is hitting, I need to move this out of the way. There's a Jupiter-Rahu conjunction, so there can be some legal disputes and some legal scandals, some governmental scandals, especially up through California, especially around LA, going up through the center of the state and going all the way up through Nevada and into Western Canada, including Idaho and Oregon and Washington. This Jupiter line runs up through pretty much through the central part of the United States, North Dakota, I'm sorry, not North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming. So I think you'll see a more conservative tilt in that part of the world. And it's also running through Nevada and definitely Utah. Sun is, and there should be some chance of political scandals up here in Canada as well. We have the sun moving through the center of the United States, or roughly the center of the United States, through Minnesota, down through Iowa, down through all the way down to Louisiana, and close to Mexico City, although not right on it. And there's a potential for conflicts with the government. And I believe this is Honduras right here. There's a Mercury-Mars line showing up in Pennsylvania, so there's an increased risk of violence in Pennsylvania and in Delaware and Washington, D.C. This can be problematic for the sitting president and also for presidential candidates, I'm afraid. So this part of the world, watch out for political violence. As a matter of fact, that trend may continue all the way up into Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, and all the way down through Florida, Georgia, so South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. There's a Venus line running through Guyana into Brazil and down into Paraguay and Uruguay, accompanied by a moon line, so that usually indicates some flooding potential, maybe some bad storms. And the Mercury line, the Mars line, is running through Colombia, I'm sorry, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador, Peru, and touching on Chile. So I think this is a time for violence in those parts of the world. I hope I'm wrong about that, or maybe even earthquakes. Okay. Um, there's a Saturn line and a Jupiter line running through eastern Brazil. Uh, I'm seeing some more government attempts at suppression of information. Um, that's what it looks like, maybe jailing political opponents. And there's a Rahu line coming close to the Azores. And also, I believe, there's a bird down here. So, and there's a sun line running through Spain and or close to Spain, and a Mercury line heading close to Spain and all the way into Western Africa, Ivory Coast, and um, Algeria. So those parts of the world have not been peaceful lately. Okay. Spain, I think, has been reasonably peaceful, although there have been some political issues there. Uh, but uh, Northwest Central Africa, especially where a lot of the French uh, still have influence, has been in danger. There's a Venus and a Mars line running right through that section, and also through uh, Scotland, close to Ireland, and close to Wales in England. And there's also a Venus line running through here. So this usually indicates some kind of disruption or some kind of civil disobedience going on in those countries. And it's the same is true in France, and the same is true in Italy, by the way. There's a Jupiter line running through um, Germany, close to Norway, and all the way down to um, who's close to Saudi Arabia and all the way down to Sudan. So again, we can expect violence in that part of the world to increase. There is a Saturn line running through Turkey. I'm trying to get the map oriented. Israel is compressed between a Saturn and a Jupiter line right now. So there is some attempt being made to come to a peaceful resolution, but it's extremely slow. Saturn will slow it down. And Saudi Arabia is not helping. The war in the Ukraine is still going on. There's a Mars line intersecting a Saturn line, so it's not perfect for them. And there's a Rahu line going through Iran. So watch out for Iran taking countermeasures over the next week. Interestingly enough, Mars is influencing Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. So those parts of the world are um, Pakistan and Afghanistan in particular are on the brink of collapse. Yeah, so these are very unstable areas right here. So that's not a good sign. And it can indicate things like lack of food, lack of mineral resources, things like that. And that'll affect India and Sri Lanka because the Mars line is going through there. So there'll probably be some violence in India next week. The other line is the Sun line going through Ladakh and Bangladesh and going up into China and going up into Russia. So at least from this particular chart, um, it looks like government force of violence in this particular part of the world. So either from India or China, but that's dangerous as well. Um, there's a Mercury line running right through Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and running through Indonesia So that can indicate more communications and more commerce coming out of that part of the world, which um, and there's a moon line going next to China and next to Korea and sort of influencing Japan and the Philippines. So I'm wondering if there might not be some exchange of assets between these places, or maybe trying to cool things down. I know that the Korean troops have been seen in Russia, so that it's interesting that this line goes up to Russia, but it's becoming increasingly um, unstable militarily, and I just hope that we can uh, last out the 2 months that are coming with Mars in Cancer without a serious conflict breaking out. Jupiter is over Japan. Jupiter is trying to be sensible. Australia is not trying to be sensible. They're trying to worry or obsess about it. And let's see now. And Australia is also panicking a little bit right now as well. So Australia and Tasmania, this is Tasmania down here. Don't know if you can see it right here. And Mars line hitting through New Zealand, which is supposed to be a really nice part of the world, but this could mean um, demonstrations or arguments or even uh, fights over oil or other commodities. That Saturn Mars aspect, I wish I mentioned it earlier, that can make the Mars Saturn aspect can make people fight over oil or material assets. So that's about it for this week. There are some opportunities. Jupiter in Taurus is a good opportunity for financial growth. Every sign has to watch their spending to a certain extent. I don't see inflation. Uh, I'm seeing most economies going into a kind of a down cycle over the next few months. I don't think it'll be severe. And I think the United States actually already is in kind of a down cycle. Uh, Again, it's because we have a gap in employment versus unemployment. That is, there are more people, um, there are jobs being left unfilled while people are being laid off. But one of the trickiest things, and again, I've learned this from working in government for some close to 40 years, uh, is essentially um, you have and again, this isn't a tough concept to grasp. You have what's called a labor mismatch. So, so essentially, a lot of the people who are um, being um, let go, the jobs that need filling don't match their particular skill set. So it isn't that there aren't jobs out there. There are, but um, these are people who may need more money to survive or may have inappropriate skill sets for the jobs that need filling. So that's something that um, is it's a problem because of course it's a problem, Gary. Why else would you say it? But it's a problem. But it's a problem basically because a lot of our institutions are geared more towards high concept thought than on useful job skills. Not all, okay. So just to be fair, not all, but I think that's something that we'll have to see change over the next 4 years, especially in the United States. So that's it for me. You can put a fork in me. I'm done. And I look forward to doing this with you guys every week. Um, I hope you're all doing well. I love you, each and every one. There are still opportunities for you folks out there if you're ambitious and you work hard enough. The Saturn aspect on Venus doesn't mean that you can't succeed. It just means to get what you want, you just have to apply a bit more effort, or maybe be a bit more patient, but you'll get what you want. Okay? All right. Peace, everybody. I love you all. I've said that before. Please like, subscribe, and share, and comment. I do like to hear your comments. Okay. So that's about it for this week. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Um, I'm getting kind of tired of the election, although it is fascinating, to be honest. But after a while, after looking at these charts for so long and trying to fix uh, the reasons in your head for why you're leaning one way or another, it gets a little bit going over the same ground and not seeing much difference gets a little bit worried. Um, a little bit after a while. And again, I will not insist I'm right on this. There could be, but I'll just leave it at that. And you can draw your own conclusions based upon your own observations. And if you're astrologers, I'd love to hear your opinion. Even if you're not astrologers, I'd love to hear your opinion. Okay? All right. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. We'll see you real soon and have a great week. Bye bye now. Stay healthy.